This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Alrighty, welcome everyone. Good evening. My name is Stacy Yarborough, and pursuant to the Town of North Haven's Town Charter, Chapter 9, Section 903, the Town of North Haven Special Town Meeting will now come to order. If I could just have someone in the back, please close that door, because the gentleman is vacuuming. So good evening again. I am the town clerk and the tax collector, and before we get into the meat of the meeting, I always like to remind everyone, and we have a lovely little sign here along the wall, everyone keep calm, cool, courteous, be respectful. Civility in your comments and your actions is always appreciated. So before we actually go into the meeting agenda, we do need to elect a moderator. And so the moderator is nominated and elected by the members of the town meeting, which is you. It is the moderator's function to bring before the meeting all items of the warning and to assist in obtaining the objective of our meeting while ensuring the rights of individual voters who wish to be heard. The moderator's duties also include helping out any member of the town meeting who seeks clarification and or advice with regard to parliamentary procedure. Further, when it comes time to vote for the moderator or any issue tonight, please be aware that you must be an elector of the town. To be considered an elector of the town, one must have been a registered voter in our town at the time of the most recent election, one who pays taxes to the town on an assessment of property of not less than $1,000 on our most recent grand list assessment date, as well as a citizen of the United States and 18 years of age or older. These regulations will be enforced for all voting for the course of the night. And last but not least, with regard to that issue, if you are unaware of your voting privileges, I have a handy dandy book and we can look you up if need be. Now, at this time, I'm going to open the floor for moderator nominations. Are there any nominations for meeting moderator tonight?
I would like to nominate Ron Bathrick.
And second?
Second.
Okay, are there any other nominations for meeting moderator tonight? Hearing none, I will put this to a vote. All in favor of Mr. Bathrick as our special town meeting moderator signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alrighty, I now declare Mr. Bathrick as our meeting moderator. Welcome.
All right,
Good, how are you?
very good. Get my eyes on.
Yeah, no worries. If you could borrow mine, if you like. So, just going to introduce yourself?
Yes.
Alrighty.
Good evening, my name is Ron Bathrick. I'll be this evening's moderator. The town clerk will now read the warning call of tonight's special town meeting.
Thank you. Please be advised the following notice, legally referred to as the warning of meeting, was published pursuant to Connecticut state statute. A special town meeting of the electors and citizens qualified to vote in a town meeting of the town of North Haven, Connecticut will be held in the upstairs conference room number 1 in the North Haven Memorial Town Hall, 18 Church Street, North Haven, Connecticut on February 25th, 2025 at 6 p.m. for the following purpose. A, to consider and vote upon whether to adopt Chapter 192, Volunteer Firefighters Incentive Program, to the ordinances of the Town of North Haven to establish an award incentive program for volunteer firefighters. And B, to consider and vote upon whether to adopt amendments to Article 10, Property Tax Freeze Relief for certain elderly homeowners of the taxation ordinance at Chapter 184 of the ordinances of the Town of North Haven, to extend the term of the tax relief program through the 2029 grand list, to clarify the tax obligation in the event of revaluation or of improvements being made to the subject property, and to establish a lien for the total tax relief granted as deferred taxes. requirements for the reimbursement of the deferred taxes to the town, and penalties for delinquent payment, as well as related application requirements. This notice was dated North Haven, February 6, 2025, by the North Haven Board of Selectmen. Michael J. Frieda, William J. Piper, and Sally Blamey.
The town clerk will now read the first item of the special town meeting agenda.
So again, we're going to go in order. Item letter A, to consider and vote upon whether to adopt Chapter 192 Volunteer Firefighters Incentive Program to the ordinances of the Town of North Haven, to establish an award incentive program for volunteer firefighters with a resolution as follows. Resolved that in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, the Volunteer Firefighters Incentive Ordinance is hereby approved and adopted at Chapter 192 of the ordinances of the Town of North Haven, to establish an award incentive program for volunteer firefighters. A summary of the ordinance shall be published in a newspaper having a circulation in the Town of North Haven, and shall be effective 15 days after publication.
Thank you. Is there a second for this motion?
Second.
And who was that? Could you just raise your hand? I'm just taking notes.
Bill Piper, right?
Bill Piper, thank you.
Now we come to the point of the meeting when we open the door for discussion on the agenda item. Mike, would you like to do an introduction?
Yes. So regarding the first item on the agenda this evening, the volunteer firefighters new ordinance, I want to just share with everybody something that you may not realize, and I wouldn't have expected you to realize it. Down through the years, we've had an imperfection, an imbalance, and something that in retrospect was unfair. And what that revolved around was, if you look at the volunteer firefighters down through the years and even presently, there are those volunteer firefighters who are North Haven residents. There are those volunteer firefighters who are North Haven residents but don't own any property. And there are those North Haven volunteer firefighters that don't live in town. So the purpose of tonight's ordinance for your vote, we have our town attorney, Jennifer Capola, here to answer any detailed questions, is to equalize the amount that everybody should be qualifying for, which is $2,000, based on calls that are made, percentages of calls and attendance. I support this 100%, as do the other members of our Board of Selectmen. So before you vote and before you ask any questions, think about what I just described. 3 different forms of volunteer firefighters, 3 different forms of compensation in terms of tax relief. This ordinance is designed to give a stipend to those who are not in town, who are serving the town. This ordinance is to give a stipend for those volunteer firefighters who may not own any property, so that everybody qualifies for the same amount. And I think it's a fair way to do it, and I support it. If there's any questions, our town attorney is here to answer any questions.
Excellent. Before we get on with the public comment, I just want to go over the rules for discussion. So for any ensuing discussion, anyone who wishes to speak will get a chance to comment before anyone be called a second time. You must come forward to the microphone, state your name and address before you begin to speak. Discussion will be limited to this item only at this time. We ask that you limit your question and discussion to no longer than 5 minutes. And remember, after everyone has had a chance to speak, then you may have another turn. Is there anyone who would like to present discussion? Sally, please.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Sally Blamey, 5 Blossom Drive. I support this new incentive program. I think it's an excellent complement to our existing benefit program for the volunteer firefighters. Mr. Frieda talked about the abatement, which is just a credit off of your taxes. Actually, back in 2019, we amended the existing abatement ordinance. I think it dated back to the early 2000s, and we amended it in 2019 to increase the levels of benefit based on the 3 different tiers. The tiers are based on the percentage of fire calls and drills, so there's 3 different tiers. And back in 19, when we upped those amounts, I did express concern about those that might not qualify because they don't own property. We as a municipality can only give a tax abatement for taxes due to the town of North Haven. So as the first selectman explained, if one of our firefighters doesn't live in town or doesn't own property or only owns a motor vehicle and is and therefore would only get a few $100 abatement, it seemed unfair. So I'm glad that we are proposing Chapter 192. I do think it's an appropriate incentive program. It would allow, and it's my understanding that the volunteer firefighters can pick which one they want. They can't qualify for both. And the ordinance is very specific on that. So they could either take the stipend, which is a check based on their performances and the 3 levels, or they could take the abatement. And I fully support this, but I did want to ask Mr. Frieda if there was any clarification on an issue that came up at the Board of Selectmen meeting when we were discussing this, and there were some volunteer firefighters present about the highest level is 45% of 45% of fire calls, attending fire calls, and they thought it was 40. Has that been cleared up?
Yes, so the fire department has contacted the finance department to update that memo. That wasn't updated apparently until this came up at the board, and the volunteer firefighters brought this up to our attention.
Right.
So that's being updated now. Finance may have it already, and we addressed that, and there was never an update on that.
Right. I believe when we did the 2019 amendment, we not only increased the amounts, but we changed, we tinkered a bit with those percentages, and I guess that never made it to the form. So I'm glad that's straightened out. So for the reasons I've stated, I think this makes it an equal playing field for all volunteer firefighters. They are dedicated to our community. They deserve this benefit program, and I urge you all to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else like to come up and speak? Please.
Good evening, everyone. David Cohen, 55 Tokenique. Hey, how you doing? Just to humanize this a little bit for folks in the room, there's a group of volunteers right here. I'm also a volunteer with West Ridge, and there's a couple guys in this group who either don't live in town or don't own property, or both. And they come to every call that I go to. They're up throughout the night, going to everything that, every alarm that goes off, they're there for it. So the job that they do is the exact same job that I do in town. So there is, it's from a fairness perspective. I agree with what Sally said, with what Michael said. We owe these folks the same benefit that the rest of us get in town for doing the job we do. We don't do it for the benefit. We do it for all of you and for public serving our community. But it is, it is something that is nice for folks, and we should certainly give the same benefit to everybody in town, and everybody who doesn't live in town and who does this job, the same benefit for everyone. The other thing that's important here to remember, it's hard to recruit volunteers, and there's we have to sometimes go out of town. We have to go to Hampden. We have to go to other communities in town to bring folks to help and reinforce our numbers. And our numbers are not as big as they used to be. So when we have new folks coming to town and they want to be a volunteer, and they ask us, is there a benefit in town? And our answer up till this point has been, only if you live here and only if you own property. It doesn't make us feel good, and it's hard to recruit folks from other communities. So this will not only equalize and level the playing field, but it also helps in recruitment efforts, which is a big, big help to the volunteers here. So that's it. So thanks for your time. All right, I urge you to vote yes on this ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you.
Seats right over here. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else like to speak? Please do.
Mary White, Summer Lane. I encourage everybody to vote yes on this ordinance. And my only question is, does it sunset, does it expire, or it just will continue unless we need to make a change to it?
Jen?
So this ordinance does not have a sunset provision, unlike the next one that is on the agenda for tonight. So in order to take the benefit away, we would have to take action through the town meeting to amend the ordinance.
You all set? Mary, was that it? Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay.
Oh, wait, I had
Oh,
one very
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Nancy Barrett, 1 Crestview Drive. I'll be very quick. I attended an open house at the Northeast Volunteer Firehouse this last Saturday, and I learned a tremendous amount about our volunteer crews, not just at that firehouse, but throughout our town. I learned a lot about the equipment, about their dedication, which I assumed, but now I know for certain. But also I learned that their engine, for example, at Northeast had been in operation 24/7 for the entire week. So, we make assumptions about the volunteer crew that, obviously all work full-time jobs, and then they also do this in their spare time. But I was just really impressed by the level of dedication to actually man an engine 24/7 for an entire week. So I appreciate the dedication, and I absolutely support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of seats up here, fellas.
Yes.
If you want to grab a seat up here. Does anyone else like to speak? Seeing no one, we'll be moving on to the vote. So all in favor of the resolution for agenda from letter A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. I think it's pretty obvious that the ayes have it. Resolution passes. The town clerk will now read the second item of the special town meeting agenda.
Thank you. Item letter B, to consider and vote upon whether to adopt amendments to Article 10 property tax freeze relief for certain elderly homeowners of the taxation ordinance at Chapter 184 of the ordinances of the town of North Haven, to extend the term of the tax relief program through the 2029 grand list, to clarify the tax obligation in the event of revaluation or of improvements being made to the subject property, and to establish a lien for the total tax relief granted as deferred taxes, requirements for the reimbursement of the deferred taxes to the town, and penalties for delinquent payment, as well as related application requirements. And as relates to this agenda item, their corresponding resolution. That in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, amendments to the taxation ordinance are hereby approved and adopted at Article 10, property tax relief for certain elderly homeowners of Chapter...
Hold on a second. Gentlemen, by the elevator, gentlemen, can you please close that door? If you're gonna have a conversation, this meeting's still moving on. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Homeowners of Chapter 184 of the ordinances of the town of North Haven to extend the term of the tax relief program through the 2019 grand list, to clarify the tax obligation in the event of revaluation or of improvements being made to the subject property, and to establish a lien for the total tax relief granted as deferred taxes. Requirements for the reimbursement of the deferred taxes to the town, and penalties for delinquent payment, as well as related application requirements. The amendments to the taxation ordinance at Article 10 of Chapter 184 shall be published in a newspaper having a circulation in the town of North Haven, and shall be effective 15 days after publication.
Is Is there a second for this resolution?
Second.
Bill Piper.
Yep, thank you.
Now we'll come to the point of the meeting where we are going to open the floor for discussion of this agenda item. Before we do that, I'm going to ask First Selectman if you'd like to do an introduction.
Sure. Thank you very much. This is an ordinance that sunsetted last year, and we found out about the fact the sunset happened. Our town attorney here, Jennifer Capola, has spent a lot of time on both ordinances, the volunteer firefighters ordinance and this senior tax freeze ordinance. So I'd like to give you an executive overview of this with some very important components that are very important to understand. What this is about is that if you're a senior citizen in town, and let's say your home taxes are $7,000 a year, if this ordinance passes tonight, your taxes are frozen at $7,000 a year for the life of this ordinance, which I think, Jen, is 5 years, I believe, again.
Yes.
5 years. So what that means is, I'm going to give you some hypotheticals here. If your taxes over 5 years if this passes tonight, is a $200 increase every year, 5 years times 200 is $1,000. God forbid if the senior passes away. This ordinance is different than the last ordinance. There's what's called a clawback clause. And the way that works is this. Upon, God forbid, the senior passing away, upon the transfer of the home to the heirs have to pay back the $1,000. The senior gets the benefit of having the taxes never increase over the 5 years, but the heirs will have to pay back whatever the incremental amount of tax increases were over the base of $7,000. So that's a very important thing to understand. We support this. I support it. The Board of Selectmen support it. The last time, it only passed by 1 vote. This time, we added the clawback to pay back the dollars, the $1,000 hypothetical formula that I gave. Jennifer will have more detail because she wrote the ordinance if there's any questions. So tonight's goal is to see if we can have this ordinance passed so that the seniors have stability moving forward in what their taxes will be, and that is the point of tonight's discussion, tonight's question and answer, and tonight's vote.
Thanks. Thank you, Mark. Okay, the rules for this discussion will be the same as the prior. For any ensuing discussion, anyone who wishes to speak will get a chance to comment before anyone else can be called for a second time. You must come forward to the microphone, state your name and address before you begin to speak. Discussions will be limited to this item only at this time. We ask that you limit your question and discussion to no longer than 5 minutes. And remember that after everyone has had a chance to speak, then you may have opportunity to come forward and speak again. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak on this? Please, Sally.
I just need to make
Yes,
a
Sally.
point of order. I don't mean to interrupt you.
The expiration date?
Yes, there's an error on the resolution.
Oh, okay.
So the resolution I have to reread in corrected form. Sorry, Sally.
No problem.
So the corrected resolution, that in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, amendments to the taxation ordinance are hereby approved and adopted at Article 10, property tax relief for certain elderly homeowners of Chapter 184 of the ordinances of the Town of North Haven to extend the term of the tax relief program through 2029. There was an error previously of the 2029 grand list to clarify the tax obligation in the event of revaluation or of improvements being made to the subject property and to establish a lien for the total tax relief granted as deferred taxes, requirements for the reimbursement of the deferred taxes to the town, and penalties for delinquent payment, as well as related application requirements. The amendments to the taxation ordinance at Article 10 of Chapter 184 shall be published in a newspaper having a circulation in the town of North Haven and shall be effective 15 days after publication. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelley, just 1 second.
Yep.
Mike, is there anything you'd like to add before we move forward?
No, I think I covered it in an overview fashion, and Jennifer again has all the details if there's any questions.
Excellent. Sally,
Okay,
please.
yes, Sally Buemi, still at 5 Blossom. And council, was there, you're satisfied there was no defect in our notice?
I think it's fine because the item itself was correct. So amending the resolution, I think is fine. Obviously, 2019 has come and gone. So
Yeah.
if you look at the
29, right.
fall item, it had 2019.
Instead of 2029 grand list. Okay. So you're fine. Okay, I support this tax freeze program. I do believe the initial tax freeze program was adopted in 2016 and it expired in 2021, not last year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's we haven't had it in 4 years. It's not 1 year. So I think it's long overdue that we are bringing it back. I do support the clawback. I understand that was a stickling point back in 2016. It was a very close vote. The purpose of this ordinance is to give a tax benefit to our seniors over 70 who qualify with certain income restrictions and asset limitations. So we're trying to freeze their taxes at the rate that they are from when they first apply, so that if the mill rate should go up, their taxes would stay the same. And then upon certain conditions, the clawback would click in and the town would recoup those deferred taxes. So that's the big difference, is the deferment. But I do have one suggestion that I would like to make, and it is in 184-42A subsection 2, which is the red line section, which is the clawback. 2A lists the time, the instances or the criteria as to when the clawback would click in. And it says, the death of the homeowner, or the transfer or sale of the property, or if the homeowner is no longer occupying it as their principal residence. But then it says, if the homeowner or his or her surviving spouse becomes ineligible to receive the benefits. And I would like that removed because they may become ineligible for 1 year for a variety of reasons. There might be a little jump in income that disqualifies them, or there could be a long illness that they missed the application deadline, because even though there's that initial application, there is a provision in here that says they must annually reapply. So they could have, for a variety of reasons, miss 1 year. And I would hate that 1 year to trigger the clawback. So I would either like to remove that. I still think that the town's clawback rights to the deferred taxes are protected, or I would put in there the homeowner or his or her spouse becomes ineligible to receive benefits for 3 years consecutive, or something like that. And so in case they miss out 1 year for some unforeseen reason, but then the following year they reapply and requalify. According to how it's written now, missing that 1 year would trigger the clawback. And so I think that's a little harsh. Have you seen any other ordinances that address that issue, or what is your opinion, Counselor?
I've looked at a number of deferral programs and nothing comes to mind. I should be, yeah.
Okay.
I have looked at a number of deferral programs. There are a lot of towns that do have deferrals, some with the clawback and some without. And I don't recall that specifically, that they're giving that scenario, that benefit of being able to get back onto the program. I think, I do want to just consider whether or not there's amendment elsewhere that needs to be made. So perhaps when people are coming forward to comment on what Ms. Boemi just suggested as an amendment, if you could also give your opinion about what you think about what she said.
Right. Okay.
While I take a look at that.
Thank you. Again, other than that, I support this. I think it's an appropriate a benefit to our senior citizens. I would just hate the clawback to be triggered in on that one ineligible year that could happen for a variety of reasons. So that's the only suggestion I have. Otherwise, I think it's a great program. I'm glad it's coming back, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Please, in the back. I'll get you.
Jenny Caldwell, 69 Kimberly Circle. Mine is more of a question. So I'm not crazy about the idea of the clawback because, if, depending on how much the difference is in the taxes, it could become quite a debt for a family. And so in circumstances like an elderly person has to sell their home to go to assisted living or something like that, are they then paying back the taxes that was the relief? Okay.
Yes.
I don't think that's, I like the idea of the tax relief, but if I vote against it, it will be because of that, because I just know that having recently gone through this, it's a very difficult thing when your family member has to sell their home and go to an assisted living place, which is very expensive. But then for them to have this debt that they have taken on because they got a tax relief, I personally am not in favor of that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Tim?
Tim Gabriel, 18 Renee Lane. I was generally in support of this, but that's actually a good point that Jenny raised, and I didn't think about that, so that's something to think through. I just had a couple questions, just because one of them might sound a little dumb, but I wanted to make sure it was clarified, just in case anybody else was thinking of it. When you're saying tax freeze, that freezes the rate from going up, right? In the unlikely event that taxes go down, it would not be frozen at that rate anymore?
You get the benefit of that, and that language is in the ordinance as well.
Okay, all right, good, because that makes more sense. And then the other thing is, in terms of like filling out the application and stuff like that, are there assistance programs for folks who might be on their own and stuff like that and might have trouble filling out these things that are available through the town or like through the senior center or anything like that to make sure it's not super complicated for them to do?
Well, I don't believe there's an actual program for that. The application form is relatively straightforward. I did draft it with your tax assessor, and the assessor's office. They're very helpful with those issues. So
I can also vouch for that. As tax collector, working directly with this ordinance in the past, the assessor's office has always been very helpful with regard to the issue of the application and due dates and explanation of what they're applying for.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I just want to make sure that people can, that aren't dissuaded from doing it just because it seems like it's going to be bureaucratic and long-winded and stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please follow.
Camille Patton, Elm Street, extension 511. It's my understanding that this plan is to freeze the increase, but not relieve them from paying their taxes.
That's correct.
Okay, so if we don't pass this, this means they have to pay the increase, which may cause them to have to sell their house sooner. So not passing it is also a detriment to the
Yes.
senior.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right, Camille.
Anybody else?
Oh, let her go. It's fine, you're closer.
Okay.
Closer.
Hi, Sue Benvenuti, 250 Bassett Road. I first was against this because there is a income limit, which I think every seven-year-old should have that tax freeze. And the only reason that I'm for this is because there is the clawback, because the person who sells that house or whatever, I've been through the situation with a husband dying, so I know what the year that you're a qualifying widow is. I've been through parents dying, so I know what the cost is in the year when you sell your parents' house. You're getting money, you can pay the town back $1,000 or $2,000, whatever it is, you know, as far as that goes. I think the clawback has to stay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alex Johnson, 50 Fallon Drive. I have a question, specifically because my neighbor has macular degeneration. She can barely, I have to yell to let her know it's me because she cannot see through her door to see who's coming to her door. What would be the legality for our seniors that have difficulty seeing, who are legally blind, that possibly have Parkinson's and are not able to truly sign? We'll let Princess Gigi go through. So what would be the legality of how to handle a situation like that for a loved one or a neighbor?
Probably keep it out with that. My interpretation would be a case-by-case basis. Some people are going to have relatives that have power of attorney, some won't. Some will have other options, other state or local programs that will supply people to guide them through that.
Okay. I just, for example, like my neighbor, she never had kids. Her husband's passed, so I didn't know, like, is she allowed to have a neighbor, her say, hey, I want you to sign this with a witness, and I can sign it for her? Like, what would be the solution for that?
So the specific situation I've not researched. I mean, there are services, obviously, but the most obvious thing is that if she did have a power of attorney in place, then that individual that she appointed as her power of attorney could assist and discuss it with her and explain the program and get her consent and so on and so forth. So, but as far as whether or not there are any services that assist people with this type of thing, I just, aside from translation services, I'm not really aware of anything along those lines to assist somebody who does have a vision impairment.
Okay. I was just asking because there are some seniors that just didn't have kids, they don't have family anymore, so they don't really know who to make it a power of attorney, so I just wanted to ask for them and make sure that we're reaching everyone in the community. And then that was all my question.
The other, maybe less obvious option is to gain assistance through the probate court. That's another possibility, but they would explain what the options are through the clerk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then I just wanted to say that I am in approval of Sally's amendment, from having a neighbor who they literally lost the house because they were only, their grandmother passed. They were living there only for minimal rent. They weren't really owners of the house, and they did not have the income to be able to pay taxes or be able to buy the home or anything. They barely had enough money to be able to move in with her parents. Paying $1,000, $2,000 is just completely out of their wheelhouse. Some people have family members with dementia and just move in part-time, and then they have to sell the house. But if they have this clawback and they have this huge gap in income between the generational wealth that their parents had and what they're living with the current economy, that's a very difficult situation to put somebody in. So that's just my comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else like to speak? Go ahead, Nancy. Go ahead, Nancy. I'll get you.
I just had a quick question again. I'm just kind of reviewing some of the details here. It says effective April 15, 2025. So that's this April, and that will be before we set the mill rate for the next fiscal year. So it's saying that it's applicable to assessment years commencing on or after October 1st of 2024, meaning this last October. So they will use the revaluation amount to gauge the value of a property, but will they use last year's mill rate in order to establish the basis for freezing? Because it's a dollar amount that's frozen.
Jennifer?
You have to speak.
Yeah, I think that is what was intended by the town.
Cece, please take the microphone.
Yes, that was what was intended because I obviously prepared these changes with your tax assessor and input as well from your tax collector, and that is what was intended, yes.
So, again, that would be at the 30% higher assessed rate and last year's mill rate. So the idea for the current process is to use the higher assessed value, but the lower mill rate to establish what people's tax rate will be for the next fiscal year. So now this is kind of the suboptimal combination of the higher assessed value and now last year's mill rate. Is that my understanding?
No.
No?
It'd be the current mill rate, the mill rate that the Board of Finance sets, which will be lower than last year's.
Well, again, if it's effective April 15th, then the Board of Finance will not have set the mill rate yet.
Rich?
Right?
Rich? Nancy, hold on. If you're going to make comment, you need to come
Yes,
up.
if you want to come up, please, I'll step away.
Okay.
Okay. So that's your understanding.
It is my understanding, because that is the time frame, and that is the reality of it, of the time frame that's selected. No, it
is what it is.
It is what it is.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
That's not a legal opinion, it's the facts.
Right.
Of the schedule because that's the schedule we've used, is the application is due in May.
Got it.
Because of the timing of it. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because again, since this particular ordinance sundown, we've now had 2 years in a row of mill rate increases with the hopes that with the revaluation that the mill rate would go back down. But now this is actually establishing somewhere in between where we have the increased assessed value and last year's mill rate. So, okay, so thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Mary White, Summer Lane. So my assessment question was answered. I wanted to get a little more clarification. So if the senior who is on the program has to go into a convalescent home, so that's going to the clawback's going to kick in. So they have, it's 9 months to pay back the monies that were saved. And is it after the 9 months, if the monies haven't been paid back, because maybe they haven't sold the house or whatever, then the town initiates a lien. So my my question is that correct? And also, another question is, how many people were on the program in the past? And also, approximately, what are the attorney's fees going to be for each one of the clawbacks that is going to have to, it's going to take place at some point when they pass or go into a convalescent home? As far as like putting the lien on the house and the notices and the collection, and then so we would have to think about it, that's going to be times however many people in the program. So I was just kind of wondering, what is the expense to the town to get this money back? And then lastly, I wanted to say that I do agree with Sally. I wouldn't want the clawback to be triggered prematurely for just, missing a year for filling out the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that I got all those questions, so if I skip anything, I apologize. So, in terms of the 9 months, the reason why that amount of time was selected, and you're talking about 184.43, F, or not, D. D. The reason why that time frame was selected was to allow for probate. So that's why the extended time was given. As far as the incurrence of attorney's fees, that will kick in if a collection action becomes necessary. So if somebody defaults, if they don't pay within the time afforded, then attorney's fees would be pursued as part of a collection action, as would be typical. As far as what those fees would be, I can't give you an amount, but it would be something that the taxpayer would have to pay as they would in the usual course in any collection action. So, did you have another, there was a third question, I think?
How many people are taking?
Yeah, how many people were on the
So I don't recall that number.
I don't know what it was when it ended, but there were quite a few in the beginning. I would need to double check with the assessor to ascertain those exact numbers.
I think it was less, I want to say it was between 40 and 60 people.
Oh, definitely under.
That sounds
Yeah, it was
right
definitely
to
under
me.
100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 40 to 50.
Yeah, that,
I think at its height, it was 57, but
Yeah.
it dwindled after that.
And also, when it comes to the lien itself, that lien is prepared by me and filed as town clerk. Prepared as tax collector, filed as town clerk. So that in and of itself is not an expense. Unless, of course, as attorney, I want to call you D'Onofrio, I'm sorry. Attorney Coppola says, it depends on the circumstances.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
So we have another point of order. Because of there would need to be a motion for an amendment. And so there are two options. There would be a possible motion for an amendment, a possible amendment vote, and then if the amendment vote were to fail, we would move on with the original resolution and vote tonight. If the amendment resolution passed, this would have to be, the decision on this would have to be deferred to another time. It could not take place tonight. There are too many cogs and wheels that would have to be reviewed and discussed with all the people involved in the drafting of this ordinance.
Did anyone, I don't want to go again unless
No,
anyone.
please, no one else.
Well, are you making the motion?
Well, this is, this has been expired for years. I don't want to delay it. I want it to start, get it going. So I will not make a motion, but when we were talking about, I have another question though. When we were talking about the lien, at the beginning of the process, an agreement is signed that the taxes are deferred. And there's a provision in here that says that agreement becomes a lien right away. So the lien is on the land records during the time that the homeowner is eligible and receiving the benefit, right?
That is true, yes.
What if during that time they apply for a reverse mortgage? What would happen with that lien? Would it be because I do reverse mortgages, and you have to have tax, you have to clear title. What is, would there be a subordination agreement, or how would that work?
So I think.
You can't
yeah.
subordinate taxes.
So it would be more likely, I think, in that evaluating the loan to.
The loan to value?
Yeah, ratio.
Okay.
I would think that what would be most likely is that the lender would take the amount that's owed off the amount of the loan.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought about that as well. Given, really who we're intending to benefit, that could be a scenario. So I think that would be something. They just would get a reduced loan amount to account for, what the lender were to calculate as the deferral amount. So.
Because as we know, mortgage holders don't like tax liens of any kind. Okay, well, since the amount is a relative, if your taxes go up a couple $100 a year, that's all that's being deferred. So I agree with you, the loan to ratio won't really affect the reverse mortgage significantly. I hope that's all that it is. I would think, I understand what you're saying.
I just think it's logical.
Yeah. I don't think it would stop or disqualify them from a reverse mortgage, because a lot of people utilize reverse mortgages these days to help make ends meet. And so, yeah, okay, so they would do an evaluation and reduce it from do an evaluation of the loan ratio and reduce the amount fronted. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I won't do a motion. I don't want to delay this, folks. So you would have to, if I made my motion and it passed, you'd have to rewrite, renotice,
Wouldn't be
redo
able to do anything
everything,
today.
and we'd miss this year.
You missed the window.
I don't want to, right? I don't want to miss another year. We've gone 4 years without the senior tax freeze. So, if you're on the program, folks, don't forget to get your application in on time, because if you miss it and you're out 1 year, they're going to initiate the clawback.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've already asked if there was anyone else who would like to speak. Seeing none, we're going to move forward with the vote. So all in favor of the resolution for agenda item letter B, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All and a half. All opposed by saying nay? Okay, resolution passes. Thank you very much. As there exists no further business to be considered tonight, I hereby declare the special town meeting adjourned. The minutes of this meeting will be made available to the public by the town clerk as soon as possible. Thank you all, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.